locate your characters, both the time in which you locate them, the space in which you locate them, these are complementary to each other, is central to the act of writing. And memory, because when you recall, as a writer, you are writing sometimes about the past, sometimes about the present. So the way you memorialize the past through your characters is a very central part of writing. And somewhere that chapter references this creative process in which, and memory, as we all know, can play truant. There are certain things that we remember, certain things that we don't remember, and that is an indication of what is important to us. What is important to us, we certainly remember. And if we have forgotten something, it shows that you don't really need to remember that, you don't really care to remember it. So memory is basically a process of selection. Your brain selects what you wish to remember, what you don't wish to remember. And that is what that chapter references.
So that reminds me of Michel Foucault, who said authorship is a function rather than a personality. Author is a function. So he typically asks what is an author rather than who is an author. But thinking about narration, I also remembered your comments on the parody of the theory of reincarnation, and that reminds me that postmodernism believes that nothing is sacrosanct for writing, and probably the readers can see that in this book too. Talking about the narration and language, I found, as I'm sure all readers would find, many pieces of Indianism, and at times, with all due respect, I would say that it might make the process of reading a little complex for an average reader. The question I had in mind when I was going through the book is that, is it really the lack of equivalence in English and the language that you are trying to describe, or the culture you are trying to describe, or is it just for the sake of Indianism? Or, I mean, what was the logic when you use Indianism in the novel?
I think it is both. There are times when I could have written a particular line in English. For instance, when Tehzeeb read that line, Sulekha Saunf le aao, I could have written it as Sulekha get the saunf. But the kind of import it has when you say Sulekha Saunf le aao and you say Sulekha get the saunf, at least to my mind, to my ears, would be very different. Because this is something that is so typical about the way a person would order her meal. And that tone, that flavor is what I wanted to bring to it. It actually talks about the class. That just single line will tell you about the class division between these two characters. So, although there is a perfectly fine English equivalent, I still chose to write it in Hindi. Now, as far as certain other terms are concerned, for instance, the term tambulam, which is a very South Indian reference to an offering that is made to women. In that case, I have actually explained it. You know, I have said that this is an offering of betel leaves and betel nuts with the fruit and the kumkum and the turmeric. So there is this explanation. Now, if you look at post-colonial writing, most of the writers do this. You know, I have not done anything new in this regard. Most of post-colonial writers do this. And as readers, certainly it is a challenge for us. Sometimes we may even get irritated that, you know, we are not getting the point of this and what is this. if you have read Archie, you'll find that it is a challenge to understand some of the typical things that he talks about. So I also, in a way, wanted to bring these local flavors, the local touches. And ultimately, when we read literature, our aim should also be to learn about cultures that are alien to us. If everything is familiar in literature, there is no need for us to even read, right? So, other than entertaining ourselves, we also seek to learn something in the process of reading. And devices like these make us more engaged readers. So that is it.
So I think that's a very good explanation. That opens up a new layer of meaning and logic for using Indianism. So in that case, I think this book has all the more value as a cultural text and as a post-colonial text.
Thank you.
I think one of the critics have referred to your book as post-Dalit writing. So would you like to comment on as you rightly mentioned, the language or Indianism becomes a device to represent this divide in society. So do you think you have dealt with this class system or anything social divide?
See, caste is something that I have not written about in a very direct way in this novel, but definitely there is that reference to caste. You know, it runs as a subtext through the entire novel. And you're right, it was Professor Deepta Achar from MSU in the discussion that we had in Baroda, called it a post-Dalit writing novel, where the characters, all three characters belonging to the Brahmin caste, can no longer write or think of their own subject positions with smugness, with complacency. Their subject position is constantly being challenged. It is always under contestation. And that play, that challenge to their subject position is something that this novel references at a subterranean level.
Continuing on the point of language, I found this book very humorous. Like there are many incidents, but at times it is the humor arising out of pathos, irony, or subversion. For example, the episode where Jyoti says right in the beginning of the novel that how she had to lose money because the person did not die, and this time when she is traveling, Nagamma really died. So I was thinking about the relationship between pathos and humor in this book, and your take on that.
Yes, I mean, that is a worldview somehow that I seem to carry within me, that the most tragic events also have some underlying humor in it. For instance, when you attend funerals, and I have an entire episode of a funeral, you will find that if you observe very closely, there are different kinds of mourners there. The genuine ones, the ones who are doing it for compulsion. So that gives rise to some kind of humor in a situation which is tragic. You could call, what is generally called dark humor. And we didn't read that particular extract, but there is an extract in which Chitra says, why do I think of hilarious things right in the middle of a huge tragedy? Like she's gone to her in-laws to retrieve her children, and then she remembers about how when one of her friends in the cantonment had told her that when I lost my mother-in-law, I got a trunk call from my mother in Faridkot telling me, Puttar, achhi tarah rona. So, like, she's going for a funeral, and that was the funeral of her mother-in-law. But the mother is worried whether the daughter-in-law is going to cry sufficiently. So these are some of the things that, color the way I look at tragic events also, and perhaps that has surfaced in the way I write.
So that again makes a book very important as a cultural text, and the culture that is probably seen no more. So in that case, this book is reviving past. It is trying to preserve past like a museum. And I also found this book very passionate. There are several passions described, food being, I think, major one. So would you like to comment on your, as you rightly mentioned in your introduction, that when you are not writing, you are cooking and traveling. So food as a passion in the book.
Yeah, food of course is a major passion for me. I love food, not just eating it, but also cooking it, studying it, and the history of different foods. All these I find really fascinating. And what is important about food for me is its emotional quotient. We all know that we have a great deal of emotion attached to food. There are certain foods that you associate with certain people in your life. And that for me is very important. And that is why there are complete recipes that I have given in my novel, because I find that there are so many varieties of food that are no longer made in our kitchens. It could be lack of time, lack of interest, or whatever. But somewhere we are losing some recipes which were so integral a part of our own lives. So in a way, by including some recipes in the book, it's also an attempt to memorialize this kind of food. And if you notice, it's around eating and around cooking that a lot of gossip happens, a lot of discussions happen. So when we eat, it is also, that is why eating together is very central to Indian lives, which of course unfortunately somewhere along the way we are losing. We may be picking up our plates and eating while watching the television, and that whole concept of eating together as a family may be dying in several families, but I think that is very central to my own attempts to preserve that kind of enjoyment of food, because food is a sensuous experience. You enjoy looking at food, the textures of food. Once you start eating, you enjoy that. You enjoy it through your sense of smell, your sense of taste. So all your senses are engaged in the process of creating food and consuming food.
So on a lighter note, I think this book has a value as a recipe book too. You have given us a critical book, a children's book, and I'm sure, as it is always said, the best is yet to come. Probably you are working on your next project.
Yes.
So any peep into your next projects, or probably what you are thinking of it? Will it be fiction? Will it be non-fiction?
I have two projects in mind. One is again a children's book, again for my granddaughter. I want to write a book for her at every age in her life. The first one I wrote was aimed at the age group 0 to 3. Now she's 4, so the next children's book will be for the age group 3 to 6. And again, it's an animal story. That's another passion for me. I love animals, so it will be an animal story. That is one. And I've also begun work on my second novel, and that will also have the family as a central trope in the novel. But again, it's at a very raw stage, so there's not much I can speak about it right now.
But we surely hope that the best is yet to come.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak on the creative influences on you as a writer? Probably in your formative years, somebody you might have read, or many people, many authors you might have read or come in touch with, and they might have shaped your writing style or writing themes or narrative.
Now, this is a question I find really difficult to answer because I don't have one particular influence on my writing style, my style of narration. There are several. And one very, very important person who has influenced my writing style is my late mother-in-law. She did not write, but she told us stories. And the character of Nagamma in many ways and her way of telling a story is a tribute to my late mother-in-law, because she would really enthrall us with her stories. Not just about her own life, which was always very interesting. She would tell us about how the girls would go to school in a bullock cart, which was completely covered with cloth from all sides so that they would not be visible on the way to school. This was in a place called Salem in Tamil Nadu. So episodes like this from her own life, right up to the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata, other folk tales, a really learned woman she was. So her influence is definitely there in my way of writing. And other than that, like I said, I have been a reader and also not someone who just read, but someone who studied literary texts, taught literary texts. So a variety of writers have definitely made a deep impact on me. I've already mentioned Marquez as one of my favorite. There's Isabel Allende, there's Arundhati Roy, Salman Rushdie, several writers whom I really adore.
As I said, it is epical in compass, but I also find it epical in setting. You are trying to balance a setting and a time which might be no more, the time that is no more. And there are these references to Bangalore in the past, and there are contemporary references, even references to the countries abroad. So, would you like to comment on how you chose your setting in the novel, or rather settings?
One thing I did was to create this fictional village called Gajalupur, which is based on my father's ancestral village called Gaunipalli in Karnataka. So a lot of the things that happen in Gajalupur and my description of the village is based on this real life village in Karnataka. And you're right, there is a lot of going back to the past that stems from a desire to tell the reader about a life that no longer exists. And there are many things, very minor things which, history may not record. And it is the function of the writer to bring up these things. For instance, the reference to coal gas bus. Now, that is something that may just escape documentation. And nobody would ever know that buses were run on coal gas once upon a time, or twice upon a time. So these kind of minor things, and the tent cinema. As a child, when I used to visit my dad's village, I would go to watch movies in a tent, and you had those old projectors. They would fit the reel and roll it like that, and then when one reel got over, the other one had to be fitted. So now that is something that we have moved so far away from. So it's a kind of way, it's my way of remembering these things.
So it is interesting to note that this book of supposedly fiction is actually a documentation as a,
To an
yeah,
extent,
to an extent.
like a lot of fiction
A lot
is.
of fiction, yes.
And there can be the videotapes also that we used to bring at home.
Yes, the DVDs. Yes.
And moving towards the end of the novel, the end reminds me of Hamlet, Act 5, Scene 2, where he says, "Things standing thus unknown shall live behind me, if thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while. And in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story." And at the end of this book, Jyoti is in pain. And that made me question whether it is an impossibility you are referring to, the impossibility of carrying a story over. As a writer, you have carried over the story, but as a character, Jyoti probably fails, or it is impossible for anyone, whether it is Jyoti or anybody else, to carry over the story.
I think Jyoti represents the burden of storytelling. You know, like when you wish to tell a story, it is like offloading a burden. And she has been the recipient of the narratives of both Nagama and Chitra, coming to her in very spectral forms. You know, Nagama comes as a ghost, Chitra only comes through her emails to narrate her story. So she gets, over a period of time, so burdened by these spectral figures in her life that it almost becomes impossible for her to carry forward, and then that results in her ultimate breakdown. And at one level, it's also about the writer's function. So long as you are writing, you know, you are in that process of writing. But once the book is written and it is out in the public domain, then each reader is a writer of the book. Because every interpretation that you come up with, you are writing the book yourself in a way. So Jyoti's end is also about how her role as narrator is coming to an end because she has done her duty of writing out these two narratives. And now that the book is going to be given, to be, you know, presented to the reader, it is now the reader who becomes the writer.
Story as a device we have discussed, but in the second part, because you said two narratives, that reminded me of the second part on Chitra. And that part is largely in epistolary form. So letter writing also becomes a device. Again, that's an art which probably no more exists. So was it a conscious decision to use this device of letter writing as a narrative technique, or was it some other reason?
Letter writing, again, as we all know, is a dying art. And I used to be a prolific letter writer. And I loved, my letters would run into 5 pages, 6 pages. I would write really long letters to my friends and after marriage to my parents, giving them all kinds of little details about the things that are happening around me. So in a way, Chitra represents this passion for letter writing. Her first letter is a regular letter which is written, placed into an envelope and posted. Then gradually she also shifts to emails. But at the same time she's also writing really long emails which then begin to come as attachments because her emails are really long. So then she starts writing as attachments. So this is also, you know, trying to convey this progression of the process of writing and the modes in which we write, moving from one form like letter, then to email, and so on and so forth. In fact, that's one thing I could reveal about my next novel, and that is a large part of that novel is going to come in the form of WhatsApp exchanges. So, you know, like it's a spillover of this novel into the contemporary period.
So we have seen many instances where the past is revived and the traditions are memorized, but it is interesting the way you have shown the transition from the time when letters were written to the time when emails are written. So that is the beauty of this novel, I think. It captures the past authentically and it also runs into the future and the present as well. The setting, as you rightly said, reminds us of the very famous R.K. Narayan's Malgudi and other fictional settings. And talking about tradition that you have captured here, there are traditions, as it is rightly said about them, that when they are passed on from one generation to the other, if in the first generation there are 10 traditions, 8 will be surviving in the second and 6 in the third. So there will be this gradual, gradual erosion of traditions and struggle. So in that case, I think this book has an intrinsic value as a cultural text, as a post-colonial text, as a text that has very contemporary value, and that takes us down the memory lane, of course. I, as one, of course, would not know about the coal process, so that really I can see that how it might help the readers, and especially for students and the audience here. I'm sure it is going to be a rewarding experience. The students and those who have read the book already would probably testify to it, that how rewarding it is. But for others, this might be really a good experience that I can be sure about. And I would invite you for your concluding remarks.
Thank you. Well, I have a few copies of the book here. If anyone is interested in getting one, I would be happy to sign it for you. And it's been a long session, and I'm really grateful for your patience. And I would be happy to take questions from the audience if there are any.
So we are moving towards question answer session. The audience may present their views, opinions, questions, queries.
With writer's block sometimes. Did you ever feel that? And if you feel, so how you deal with that?
Absolutely, writer's block I think is, you know, the biggest problem that one faces in the process of writing. And as you can see, I've already said that it's had an extraordinarily long gestation period starting from 2006 to the present. And so it's not just once, but several times that I have faced this writer's block. It happens for various reasons. Sometimes it's the exigencies of daily life, and sometimes you actually hit a roadblock in your very narrative. You don't know how to take the story forward. You keep thinking about it, then you come up with one episode and then you say, no, I'm not happy with this. You think of taking your character along a different path. So this whole process of creating this text is definitely a huge challenge. Several roadblocks, several writer's block. But I think the way to get over that, as Professor Budbhatti had already referred to, is perseverance. One just has to keep, you know, like hitting your head against the wall and reminding yourself that you need to write this. You need to. It's a calling. It's like a calling, you know. Like you have to deliver, and that's the only attitude to your own work that will help you to overcome the writer's block. Thank you.
I haven't read the novel yet, but I think Nagama is telling her story of her own time. One humble suggestion for you. if Nagamma is living right now and she adopts the things, mobiles, chatting, that you can include in the next step.
Actually, yes. A lot of people have told me to bring back Nagamma into my next novel. Yeah, unfortunately she's dead, so but then you never know, she could. And for those of you who have read the novel, she does come back in a way, but I don't want to reveal that because then that would be a spoiler for those of you who wish to. So she does return, yes, but in a very unexpected, different
So
way.
again we are waiting for the same session.
Session with Nagamma over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
First of all, I am sorry I will be spoiling the novel for you guys. Ma'am, as we read the ending of the novel, Jyoti breaks down completely, and we are revealed that she is moved to an asylum. So this divides her in two groups of people. One who believe that the whole story is Nagamma and Chitra told Jyoti. That was the reason that that made Jyoti whatever she is. And one group is believing that she was already mad and all these stories were happening inside her head. So we would like to know which side are you on?
Well, I intended Jyoti to start off as, she is a university professor, and certainly I did not intend her to be mad all along, but I planned it as a gradual disintegration. So I would, I think, belong to the group which believes that she's trying to tell the story and the burden of storytelling has taken a toll on her emotional life, like it does even to a writer in the process of writing, because we are actually trying to live out the lives of our characters. We wish to empathize with them in order to really get to the very soul of our characters. So writing is a huge amount of emotional pressure on the writer also. So Jyoti as the narrator conveys this kind of emotional burden that the writer actually has.
Maybe request Professor Kashmira Mehta to be on the stage. Maybe request Professor K.K. Bukhuti to be on the stage.
थोड़ा ऊपर
We can continue the question and answer session. I would invite the next speaker.
Now, I wanted to ask a question that do you think that mentality of people will change before that the period where people were in that village and then when we see Chitra's episode, we find that people are like changing their constantly mind, and can you tell us something about that, their changing of mind and changing of their...
Certainly, I mean, our outlook to life, our perspectives on life are definitely determined by our location, both in time and in space. And we are constantly evolving in the way we think. Even as individuals, the way we thought 10 years ago may be very different from the way we think today. So unless, and that's, integral to human life. Like, one does not really stagnate. One is constantly growing, evolving, and one should also. That's the richness of life. Another question? Yeah, I think so. Be careful.
Welcome, ma'am. My question is that you are, in a way, decolonizing language as a using, as Chaya sir said, that you have used saman instead of language.
Yes.
So in one hand you are decolonizing language, on other way you are using Hindified language or Hindi. So you are homogenizing the post-colonial writing. So in Indian multicultural, multilingual scenario, how a writer has to careful about the language, what we call it, that he has to take care about the language, because I am translating Saj or Isar Abdul Latif Beta from Sindhi to Kutchi and now in English. So I have to careful about the use of language. Should I remain or contain the original word, or should I translate it in English? So in multicultural, multilingual scenario, what is the author's perspective or about language, how to use language in scenario like India or multilingual scenario, multilingual, sorry.
See, English is not our first language. We all come to it much later in life. And so to that extent, we carry with us the influence of our mother tongues, the sentence constructions. For instance, there is Jyoti's mother who says, anything all you say. Now, a person who speaks standard English would probably call it wrong. It's grammatically wrong. But that is the way a lot of us speak English, because we are constantly getting interfered. There is that, first language interference every time we use our second or third languages, which we acquire later. And I was, careful enough to retain some of those structures, because if I had to give perfect standard English to all the characters in the novel, it would smack of inauthenticity. So in the larger interest of authenticity, even if it meant that it was wrong English, and this whole notion of right and wrong is also, problematic. So I did not want to sacrifice that local flavor in the interest of standard English. And that, I think, we need to keep in mind as writers who are writing in a language that is not native to us. Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much for your interest.
In absence of, Budpati sir is coming, so he will formally thank.
Just a minute, I invite Principal for validation.
Okay,
Secretary distribution. Just 5 minutes.
We'll wait for the principal, sir.
Do any of you write? What kind of writing do you do?
Basically poetry.
Okay. In which language?
Hindi and English.
Fish question. And I hope the rest of you are inspired enough to read it now that you have some snatches of it.
It really fascinates how you use the whole concept of God. Like in one chapter, you will be praising Him, using instances like that play or singers in the street who are talking about Krishna and
Yes.
Subhadra.
That's a folk
That's really
tradition
fascinating, yeah.
in Karnataka called Harikatha.
Yeah.
And they would sing all through the night, you know, beautiful singers and under the moon and, you know, like people sitting out and reading and listening to their singing. Well, that's an experience, you know, that is something else. That's not something you can get by listening to music on your phones.
And at one point, you are questioning the creativity and imagination of God. Like He has a common story for everyone with just a little bit of changes in it.
Yes,
So
yes.
the main plot is same. He lacks imagination and creativity to create everyone's life.
That's it. Thank you. I'm so happy you noticed that because that's a very, it was a very subtle point, and if you could, you know, like get it and really.
Like we also discussed about belief, if you remember when
Yes,
we started
yes,
those
yes,
group
yes.
things.
Yeah, right.
And yesterday we had good students.
Fun.
How did you like it?
We visited a few palaces and
Oh
all.
yeah, oh I loved it. I just loved it. It's so, I mean, such a rich and distinctive culture. Subsequently, Manoj took me to Ajrakpur also. And that was something I was completely fascinated. Completely. Because they are constantly homogenizing places, cultures, and when you think of, you know, embroidery, you just think of that mirror work embroidery, you know, which is a huge export of Kutch to the rest of the world. But yesterday I was fascinated that each community has its own distinctive style of embroidery, and the kind of work that is done is just something, you know, amazing. You have Ahirs and Rabadis and Jats and all doing different kinds of embroidery. I think that is something, and so many styles, and that is, you know, like passed on from generation to generation, which I was totally fascinated. And of course, your hospitality, your warmth, and we've become friends, which is such a nice thing to
It would be
gather.
nice to send you over both for validation.
Sure, I would be happy to read your work, definitely. I would love to.
In the interlude, we have Professor Joseph. He is a retired professor, and he would like to speak something on this occasion.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Gita Mishra was an esteemed colleague of mine at Tolani College of Arts and Science, in the Department of English of Tolani College of Arts and Science. And when I came to know that she has written her debut novel, and would be coming to Bhuj to have a conversation with the students and the staff. I thought of the pleasurable moment of meeting her again after some years. So, but on the way, I was thinking that the reading and conversation would be a boring event because she has written a novel. She is the mother of, the novel is her baby. So the mother would be speaking about her baby and the listeners, whether they are mothers or unmarried. So they would be feeling a bit, I think, in an envious situation. So, of course, they would have to listen to her, and that is it. But anyway, I found that this session has been very imaginatively reconstructed here. I think due to the Professor Manoj, who is also a student of mine, and Dr. Geeta Vishwanath also. So this interactive session has been has made this discussion very lively and very interesting, and we had a better grasp of the fiction itself. So I congratulate. I found that even the students who read with a lot of integration got into the life of the novel. And I found one student was reading when the word majestic came. She was trying to raise herself up a little to be majestic. So very interactive, very much got into the spirit of the novel. So this session has been made very interesting, and we got a better appreciation of the novel. So I must thank Geeta Vishwanath. In honoring her, I feel honored myself, and I also give my appreciation of Professor Manoj and Professor Bhupati and others who organized this. So in such an imaginative way. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor Joseph. It was really heartening and encouraging to hear you. Thank you for all the kind words. We are now moving towards valedictory session. We have 5 readers who read this novel. It is often said that reading syllabus is something which is challenging, but students manage it very well. This is something even in addition to the syllabus. The question was often asked before this event, whether it is in syllabus, but it is not. And yeah, it will be. And despite the fact that it is not in the syllabus, these 5 readers rather, chose to read it, get into the skin of the novel, as Professor Joseph said. So as a token of appreciation on behalf of Lalam College, we will give them mementos. I would like to invite Neha Chande to get her memento from Madam Geeta Vishwanath. I would like to invite Tehzeeb Mode, Department of English, Kutch University, postgraduate student, to get her memento from Madam Geeta Vishwanath. Getting her memento from Madam Geeta Vishwanath. We have Shivani Rathod, also a final year student at this college, getting the memento from Madam Geeta Vishwanath. We have Manohar Thakkar, who will get his memento from Madam Geeta Vishwanath. After felicitating the students, the first credit goes to Madam Geeta Vishwanath, who accepted our invitation, who took time out of her schedule, traveled all the way from Baroda where she lives. She is here among us today. She met all the readers, all the college members. So, as a token of gratitude, I would request Principal Dr. Jhala to present a memento and to Madam Geeta Vishwanath.
I must say the students over here are in a way my grand students. Because my students.
Thank you, Madam. Without you, it wouldn't have been possible. We are all organizers, but thank you for your inputs. I think it will go a long way in the life of students, in the life of readers. We are moving towards the conclusion, and I must thank, as I always do, Madam Geeta Vishwanath, the author, to come here and make this possible, this event. I'm sure we will have her. She also chose to release her book here at Bhuj. And when we were reading the excerpts, I found that Bhuj has a special relevance to this book because Bhuj is one of the settings. Not to mention that there's a movie coming on Bhuj, which is titled as Bhuj, but this is a book which has Bhuj as the setting. So I thank Professor Geeta Vishwanath for her time, for her efforts. I thank Department of English, KSKV Kutch University, and especially the head of department, Professor Kashmira Mehta, to help in this event and to be here for the entire session. I also thank Professor R.V. Basya, Associate Professor at Department of English, KSKV Kutch University, Professor Milind Solanki, Assistant Professor at Department of English, Kutch University. I also thank the members of English fraternity, Professor Yagnesh Turia, Professor Dharmesh Rathod, Professor Usha Denbar, to come here to attend the event from the colleges where they are giving their best. They had to travel, and yet Professor Joseph, for example, traveled from Adipur. Professor Doria and Professor Rathod are also traveling from Adipur. Madam is traveling from Nakatrana, and yet they could make it possible to be among us and to provide. I also thank all the participants, all the students who attended this event and provided their valuable inputs, especially the students of the Department of English, as also the alumni of this college. I particularly thank all the media persons who are here to cover this event and make it, to spread the word about this event. So thank you all the media persons, people from all the news channels, all the newspapers, especially Kutch Mitra, Kutch Uday, Mahashapura News Channel. Thank you everyone. So special thanks to media. But although this is organized by R.L. Lalan College, but I would be failing in my duties if I did not thank Professor C.S. Jhala, the principal of R.L. Lalan College, for his valuable cooperation. And also Professor T.K. Budgati, head of the department. All my colleagues at the department, all my colleagues at the college, from various departments at this college, the administrative staff, the office staff, the ministerial staff, as also, last but not the least, the volunteers from TYBA, without whom it wouldn't have been possible. Urush, Prenel, Arpit, everyone, whether I can name them or not, but everyone, you are in my heart. Thank you. Till we meet next, we give it a pause and we shall call it a session. But I'm sure in future we will have such meet the author sessions and more sessions with Madam Geeta Vishwanath. We were thinking about a creative writing workshop in future, if some of you are interested. She can really teach us how to write creatively. Thank you, madam. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, one more token of gratitude from the readers, the 5 readers. Manohar Thakur, Shivani Rathod, Tazid Node, Tamanna Goswami and Neha Chande. They would like to felicitate Madam Geeta Vishwanath on their behalf. They are presenting a piece of handicraft to Madam.
Thank you so much. I'm really overwhelmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Manoj.
Big thanks to Let's give him a big hand.
वो उसका नाम क्या है, उसमें क्या कंटेंट, आप क्या मैसेज देना चाहती है और कुछ इसके बारे में।
जो उपन्यास मैंने लिखा है उसका नाम है ट्वाइस इट हैपेंड, यानी 2 बार हुआ है। एंड द बुक वो फैमिली रिलेशनशिप्स के बारे में है और ये फैमिली और रिलेशनशिप्स जो है वो कैसे चेंज होता रहता है एक समय से दूसरा समय, चेंजेस इन रिलेशनशिप।
इससे क्या मैसेज जाता है, क्या कहना चाहती पूरी उपन्यास में आप?
मैसेज यानी बेसिकली कहानी है और कहानी जो है एक राइटर लिखते हैं बेसिकली फॉर एंटरटेनमेंट, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ अगर रीडर जो है उनको अपने तरफ से जो मैसेज वो उपन्यास से वो निकाल सकते हैं, वो फिर राइटर के लिए बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाती है। जब राइटर लिखती है तो इतना कॉन्शियस नहीं होती है कि एक स्पेसिफिक मैसेज, एक स्पेसिफिक संदेश देना है, लेकिन वो स्टोरी के दौरान ही अगर कुछ मैसेज निकला है तो फिर वही जो रीडर जो निकालते हैं उस उपन्यास से।
आपने महिलाओं की भावनाओं को अच्छी तरह उजागर किया है, कैसे किया है?
एज अ वुमन मैं खुद महिला हूँ, तो हमारे जो डिज़ायर्स होते हैं, हमारे जो समाज में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स होते हैं, उसकी नॉलेज हर वुमन को होता ही है। जैसे हमारे तजुर्बा अलग होता है फ्रॉम मेन, सो उसके बारे में कुछ लिखने की कोशिश किया है इन द नॉवल। एक फीमेल रोल है सोसाइटी में, एज वुमेन हम कैसे जीते हैं, हमारे क्या डिज़ायर्स होते हैं, उसके बारे में।
क्या वो चेंज आया इस पूरी सोसाइटी में, महिलाओं की तरफ का एटीट्यूड में कोई चेंज आया क्या?
चेंजेस तो डेफिनेटली आया भी है एंड आना भी चाहिए। एंड एज द सोसाइटी प्रोग्रेसेस, जो सोसाइटी मॉडर्न आधुनिक बनता रहता है, तो एटीट्यूड टू विमेन भी बदलता रहता है एंड वो होना भी चाहिए। लाइक एक ज़माना था जब औरतें घर से बाहर भी नहीं निकलते थे, बट अभी हम पब्लिक स्पेसेस में औरतों को देखते हैं, बट कई ऐसे एटीट्यूड्स जो है वो बिल्कुल बदला भी नहीं है। वो they have remained the same. And जैसे आप violence against women, वो तो लगता है कि ज़्यादा हो गया है, ज़्यादा हुआ है। और वो क्यों हुआ है? क्योंकि हम देखते हैं विमेन को पब्लिक स्पेसेस में, और ये जो है फिर मेल्स को थोड़ा थ्रेट जैसा लगता है। व्हाट वुड यू से गुजराती? लाइक विमेन इन पब्लिक स्पेसेस थ्रेटन द मेल।
હા, આ બધી સ્ત્રીઓની હાજરી આ બધી જગ્યાએ પુરુષ માટે એક પ્રકારનું જોખમ ઊભું કરે, પુરુષને એક પ્રકારનું એવું
અસલામતી લાગે છે કે અમારું કંઈ નીકળી જાય છે, અમારું કંઈ જૂટવાઈ જાય છે,
You're losing something.
Losing something.
Yeah, losing some.
એનું
losing
વર્ચસ્વ ઘટી જશે એવું પણ ઘણીવાર લાગતું હોય છે.
ઓકે
So
ઓકે
that-
ધન્યવાદ
yeah.
ધન્યવાદ
Thank you. Thank you.
આપણે બીજી કે અસલામતી બાબતે મારાથી કોઈ આગળ નહીં
હા
મેરે સે કોઈ
Some
આગે
kind
નહીં
of threat.